Welcome to the Better Business, Better Life podcast with Stuart Wilkinson and
We've got Dave Jaggs back as always.
a special guest. Welcome, Callum.
Thanks, team.
Callum doesn't want us to call him the specialist, but for today's podcast, he's as close as we're going to get.
Correct. So today's podcast is on cybersecurity. So last week was Cybersecurity Smart Week, I think it was called, in New Zealand. And we thought we would do a bit of a discussion on it. There's going to be a lot of reference documents we'll talk about in the podcast. So all the links are already below. Some really good information out there. And Callum's been involved because alongside being a business partner, Callum helps manage our IT. RightWay, and in particular over the last 3 years, has done a lot of work on our security for RightWay through our offices, cloud, all that sort of stuff. So I guess it's got a bit more of a technical background than me and Dave on this subject, but I think cybersecurity has become a much more visible thing for most people in life, whether that's personal or they're through their business. And I guess when we talk about cybersecurity, it's not just the financial cost of, if you get hacked and then trying to get some money or Bitcoin, but it's the disruption to your business and your staff's productivity. It's your potential influence on your brand and what that could do, and your ability just to deliver what you deliver in your business and what that can do through having interruptions to your network and that sort of stuff. So I thought we'd start with what is cyber security and what are the common things that I guess people could experience. And so the main website we're going to reference is, I think it's abbreviation, but I'm not quite sure. But it's the Cybersecurity Cert New Zealand. It's called Cybersecurity something, but it's the government agency, and they've got a lot of really good articles. And the kind of main 5 they talk about is ransom, business email, siphoning scams, insider threats. That's someone inside your business. And data breach, which we've kind of heard. And most people have heard these words, but let's put Callum on the spot to start with. When people hear about ransomware, Callum, like there's lots of kind of maybe know what it is. It's just a word that's used in the press. What is a ransomware? What happens?
Oh, nice way to put me on the spot. Just keep in mind, team, I'm not actually the specialist in this area. So my understanding of ransomware is specifically that someone's holding you to ransom over something that they've got, i.e. probably the most common one is hackers are managing to get into your system and they essentially delete your hard drive, and then they send you some information. Well, they back up your hard drive and all your critical information to theirs, and then they basically send you a ransom note saying, "Hey, pay us $10,000 and we'll give you all your data back, or it's gone."
Yeah.
Which unfortunately is really common, and a lot of people get stung by it.
Is that part of the first, I guess, discussion point about cybersecurity? Is it won't happen to me, and it gets pushed down the priority list because it's the old classic important, not urgent kind of thing, and until it kind of happens, like, oh, I don't need insurance, and then something happens, you're like, oh, I should have had insurance. It's kind of that, it's the same sort of thing, but actually having a plan of these things, when it happens, it can be, well, business critical in a lot of ways.
Yeah, there is no rhyme or reason to who they're focusing on or who they're attacking, be it a large-scale operation or, just a much smaller, mum and dad business or sole trader. I have heard examples of both. And all sizes. So unfortunately, you never know who's going to get hit, and everyone just needs to be aware.
And Callum, what is the, you talk about people getting into systems. How is there things that I guess people need to be conscious of that we all hear about the old Nigerian prince emails and all that kind of stuff, but we do see that quite often now about emails, files. And also them getting pretty smart about it is in the way that they can impersonate or look like it's pretty authentic, I guess, in a way. So how do people get into company systems nowadays, and what are things that people need to look out for? And I know this is an area we've done a lot of work on, isn't it? The RightWay.
Yeah, there's lots of ways, and I won't pretend to know all of them. Just to clarify, I think the most common one is, as you point out, is emails, be them phishing emails. Now, phishing emails is just a generalized email that they're going to send out to literally thousands, millions of email inboxes just hoping someone's going to hit it. What can happen is spear phishing emails. And a spear phishing email is one where they go in and they investigate. The hackers will investigate an organization and they'll get some key information about it. And then they'll target that specific organization with a well put together email that looks very authentic, using people's names, maybe some IP or something like that, targeting just to get them to follow a link or log into some form of real system somewhere. And then once they've done that, they can do lots of things. If they get into your emails, like where RightWay uses Office 365 as an example, and quite a lot of our systems are linked through our Office 365 logins.
Yeah.
As with most businesses will be, or some other script, maybe their Google login. And so once you've got those passwords and etc., it opens up a whole lot of things. Keyboard trackers, i.e. they can put some little keyboard trackers on your computer, so when you're typing emails, etc., going along and logging into your Facebook or anything in your life, suddenly they know exactly what keys you're pressing. They see your username, they see your password. They have lots of people just sitting there looking at it all the time.
It's fundamentally like the more you listen into it, the scarier it becomes. And in my head, I'm kind of going back to when that was one of my roles, which I did terribly, I'd like to point out. I just chose to bury my head, I think, to be totally honest with you. Like, the best thing we did, we used Google Suite, so at least I could control everybody's emails, rather than, how many times do we have businesses that we speak to, which is like ... builders@gmail.com, and then, their accounts email is ... accounts@gmail.com, and they're all on different emails, which technically one business owner can't even control. So it's not like they can shut them down if they want to or anything along those lines, is it? That it's something you do definitely need to start taking seriously as everything pushes out.
It does, eh? And I guess in terms of the different attacks they can go from an email is, as I said, getting the passwords. But then the other thing is, hey, follow this link and it will just install an application in your computer in the background.
I kind of guess as well, if they've got access, say, to like a Google thing, do they have access to Google Pay or something like that? If it's set up for a work account and a work card, maybe?
Again, you'd assume if they have access to your computer, full stop, and your computer's saved down credit card details. Obviously, we've got the CVC code on the back of credit cards, which, who knows? As I said, not necessarily a specialist, but I'm sure people much cleverer than me have figured that out. But
I'll put the links below, but there's a really good BBC podcast called The Lazarus Height, which is about North Korean hackers. And they took down Universal Studios. Sony, was it Sony? Sony or Universal Studios? Can't remember which one it was. Sony Studios, I think it was, in America. And I just remembered from the story that what you talked about and how they got in was a CV. So they sent in, there was a job application, and they went through as, this is my CV, and within the CV they put some code that was obviously to get them into their network. And from that, they took down the whole of Sony Pictures in America for like 2 weeks, and obviously did a massive ransom. But the way in was a quite traditional, hey, apply for this job, blah blah blah. And they were very sophisticated. Like, you could have the CV, it had a LinkedIn profile, it had it's pretty. And obviously, most of our clients are not Sony Studios, but it was a very simple, normal business process of receiving information that you would do in your normal business way that then created the problem for them. So I'll link that. It's a really interesting episode, by the way, if you want to link it below. I'll link it below. So I guess Callum is it is, and I think a lot more people have experienced it with their credit card being hacked and stuff. That's becoming a bit more prolific. The other one that I guess is linked to this, which might be separate, is social media. We've recently, last week, had a client and they're a kind of high-end clothing company, and their Facebook got hacked with what looked like Thai rat bait advertising, so not exact, and had like videos of rats everywhere. And then it's lots of ways that this can infiltrate, and then they racked up a big spend on their Facebook account. I guess there is lots of ways, and we are more connected than we ever have been, and that's great for efficiencies and communication stuff. But that, I guess, Callum, that's more exposure in lots of different ways. The more logins, the more passwords, the more vulnerability there is in some ways, isn't there?
Yeah, and funny you speak of passwords. Most people have, 1 or 2 key passwords that they probably use for everything.
Don't know what
Once
you're
you've
talking
got one
about.
password, your Facebook, your Instagram, I don't know, all the other apps that I'm too old to use probably all have, you're using the
Yeah.
same password. And yeah, but Facebook hacks, especially Facebook business, is really critical. My good friend has a business that relies a lot on Facebook, and her personal Facebook page got hacked, which linked to a business Facebook, and their business was essentially down for 3 months because
Yeah.
to get everything back through Facebook was difficult. In the end, they just let it go and started again.
That's a
Yeah.
horrible case scenario, isn't it? Because let's be honest,
Yeah.
Facebook aren't the easiest to deal with in
They
those
are
No.
horrendous
situations.
to deal with.
She
They?
found them
Horrendous.
absolutely awful.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
trying to speak to someone per Facebook is impossible. And we
You
had
get
some
stuck on a little
recently.
loop, don't you?
So,
Correct.
I mean, it's all like you can go down plenty of rabbit holes of everything, which I guess you could do that broadly across a lot of things. I guess as an example, what am I trying to say? As a broad, what are we doing with cyber security? We do really just need to maintain vigilance and be thoughtful about what we're doing. And it is a risk for us, and it is a risk for every business. I liken it to my attitude. Well, I disliken it to my attitude for I quite like Alexa, and around my house, Alexa's there, and people come into my house and they're like, but Alexa's they're listening to everything you say. And I literally just shrug and say, hey, my life's boring. If someone wants to sit there and listen to everything I have to say, good for them. I don't care. But then on the flip side, we can't have that approach with our cybersecurity, can we? We can't just go,
Yeah.
well, if someone wants to look through my computer, then whoop-de-doo, because they're not just looking through your computer.
Yeah.
And especially if you have a business, they can do a lot of damage, and they can cause you a lot of financial troubles and, mental health troubles as well.
Yeah,
So
there's a
one
lot
of
of...
If they get in, who knows?
one of the sides of it that I've always been intrigued, I guess, about is so there's obviously millions and millions of businesses out there, and quite often you see these phishing scams, but part of that cybersecurity is also protecting yourself from people So maybe a disgruntled employee leaves or something like that, and they could sit at their home if they're really annoyed with you, and if you haven't essentially got the same kind of cybersecurity measures in place where you can lock them out of things, change passwords, do whatever you need to do, they can shut your Facebook page down, and you won't be getting that one back because effectively they can sit there and pretend they're you. Or,
Correct.
And they're going to be in the same geographical area. So it's all these things that won't even potentially ping up, oh, that's strange. Someone's accessed it from North Korea, Philippines, Japan, America. Who knows where? Do you know what I mean?
And I think that, Dave, links also to this movement we've had of more work from home, where we've got more of our work devices at home. We're not all sitting in the office where we can all see what everyone does, kind of thing. Like, it is a changing dynamic of accessibility and people in multiple locations, not just locally but globally, getting into your systems and your files, whatever you want to call it. But you're right. Like, if you've got a situation with an employee and it's not going great, and it's number 5 of the type of security threats that CERT talk about, is it's insider threat, which is an employee doing some damage where it's downloading files for their own personal gain, or, as you said, doing something where, whether it's Facebook or deleting files, whatever it is. So let's talk through, okay, what do business owners do? And I guess, Dave, you talked about the first thing there, which is, I guess, and then Callum, you also talked to it, and it doesn't matter. And I know there's more than just Google and Office, but I guess the first point is actually having a proper business account with one of these suppliers that actually gives you good device management and email management and user management, I guess. So, Dave, you talk us through a little bit of how you set that up with the gym and physio, how you manage that.
So I guess we were kind of lucky in the fact that everything was an online platform, so we never actually had to store anything down as such. The only stuff that we potentially stored down on, say, a Google Drive folder was fairly nonchalant, to be totally honest with you. So we kind of, I guess, relied a lot on the security of, I guess, third-party providers like gym softwares and things like that. So if we kept our passwords safe, we should be okay on that front.
Yeah.
But, when I initially started out, we kind of built a little team around us, and we actually used Facebook Messenger. But then it was only when it got to a certain point that I was like, someone's left, and they've kind of still got you can kick them out of a chat, but they're still kind of in there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They can actually get back to the history of the chat. still. So it's like you can remove them from a chat, but they can still go back and see everything that was there before. They just don't see anything new. So then we kind of switched everything over to G Suite. So we worked with Google, and it was at that point that we actually created we called it like an alumni chat, which was just like anyone who was ever part of the business is in that chat. And it's very social and casual and non-work. It's more, anyone want to go do something at the weekend or go have a drink. But then we had the Google version of it, which was all of our work-related stuff. Because I could actually control that from Google Suite. One was like kick them out as soon as it was done, and then it actually removed all of their access. But then I can get hold of all of the files that were created through Google Drive and push them into right folders, give the right people access and things like that. But by no means did we do anything probably to the standard that we should, is the honest truth. So we're probably marginally better than poor. Do you know what I mean? but not much is the honest truth.
But I guess in some ways, though, at least you had a one system kind of managing it. And I guess, Callum, why is it so important that someone, as a business, you have really good user management? I guess there's also this probably this part here, and you could link it to whether it's accounting or marketing and stuff, where you obviously get maybe some support from an IT consultant or business or whatever, and you go, oh, I trust them to do everything because I don't understand it. But I guess you do need to skill yourself up a bit here. So what, the benefit of having, one platform to manage your development, like an Office 365, like what we use, what does the benefits does that give businesses in their protection from cyber and that sort of thing?
I guess part of it, in particular, from our point of view, was control and oversight is probably the main thing. Setting up security profiles so various people can see various things, and allowing people, whether or not they're allowed to download and install their own programs on their own computers, is quite often a big thing. Staff, they just will just go and download some stuff, and you never know what's got spyware or ransomware or anything in it. So I guess that's probably the main thing, is just having the control and being able to turn it on and off when you see fit.
So certainly New Zealand kind of got 11 kind of key, what they call points to protect your business online. And we won't go through all of them one by one, but we've touched on this already, which is passwords and password management. And I think the second part is two-factor authentication, which for a lot of systems is becoming mandatory. I know now Xero, they put it in mandatory, I think, last year for users. So Callum, just talk about the vulnerability that passwords can provide, because I guess also what we're seeing a lot of systems, you have to provide what is classed as strong passwords and all that sort of stuff, unique characters and stuff. But what do people need to think about around passwords, two-factor authentication, and why it's so important?
I guess why is it important is because people can get into your system. But I guess thinking about passwords, I think, is the question more why the strong password?
Well, just like I think like Dave, not nonchalantly, but he was kind of don't use the same password for everything, and Dave was like, not me, I wouldn't do that.
Right.
But I remember I used to have the same word and a different number that changed at the end for a while, because you have to update it every 3 months. You're like, well, I'll just change the number. But I guess the problem now with those sort of systems is technology is catching up from a hacking point of view, that it's pretty smart, and the importance of
and
not sharing passwords
as well.
Yeah.
They like that, changing the two numbers on the end of a password is quite a common thing that a lot of people do.
Yeah.
And so there are lots of you can search it on the Google. There's lots of stuff out there that says, hey, common passwords, pets' names, birth dates, all that sort of thing. And then they'll have a password that this long is generally the same, and you'll just change the characters at the end. So once you've got the main password, it's quite easy to hack.
You're in.
You're in.
Especially once you start seeing those things on Facebook as well. And I don't know, I'm going to get pretty broad in my generalisation here, but you see a certain age category, they'll put up a post like, oh, who still remembers the first street that they lived on when they were a kid? And they go in and all these people are punching out the first street they lived on.
I know.
Everyone knows that's one of your recovery questions for a certain thing, isn't it? So then the hackers have got it. And it's like, that's not actually anything to do with someone asking. That's hackers saying, who remembers what their first pet's name was? Everyone's on there. Bang, 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 bang. And it's like, so then they've got where you work from your Facebook profile or your LinkedIn profile, or whichever one they can publicly access. And then they've started filling in your security questions. So
Yeah,
they're like a few steps of the way towards the information they need from stuff
correct.
that you're banging up on social media quite happily.
It links to my and it was a few years ago, but we used to get quite in the UK about what's the government know about us and all the security threats and why do they need all this data about me? And I'm like, yeah, but you'll happily tell Mark Zuckerberg everything about your life, which has no governance over it at all or legal, but you're just willingly putting into this Facebook world your life and going, that's fine, but the government can't know me. Oh, jeez, that would anyway. And then I guess linked. Sorry, you go, Callum. You go.
No, I was just going to say, recently there's been some theory change on passwords and whether or not, like, for example, Microsoft used to, don't quote me, but I think they used to recommend that you change your password every 90 days.
Yeah.
And the theory behind that was obviously, so you've got a new password. Critical thing now with two-factor authentication is I understand their recommendation now is actually you don't change your first password every 90 days. You have a super strong password and that's it, followed up with a really good two-factor authentication thing. So that way the password's not changing. It's something super technical that's random, hard to guess and hard to hack. And then you've got the two-factor authentication. And two-factor authentication comes in lots of different forms. That could be, hey, every time you log in, you need to either answer some security questions or use a mobile device to approve your login or put a text code in or something like that. Also, you can set up the two-factor authentication to be, hey, remember my computer, but if I log into a system from any other computer, then I need a two-factor authentication. Or, there's a lot of security. Hackers will always be in front, but security and IT institutions are always a little bit behind, but they're always developing stronger and stronger things. But I personally believe hackers will always be in front because there's money in it.
That's their business, isn't it? Their business model to be in front. And I think that, so Callum talked about two-factor authentication there. So as you say, Callum, there's a number of ways that can be done now. I think it's really interesting when you probably, if anyone deals with something like from Google or Apple, it's just built in natively kind of that they do it, which I think is really interesting. But for most people, it is downloading, like there's the Google Authenticator app or there's the Microsoft one, which you can then use across platforms. So you can use it for other sites. And it generates a random code every kind of 30 seconds, I think, for you to then obviously put into whatever system.
And you can download it to your desktop and things like that to actually make it like more user-friendly.
Yeah, and I think the big thing I would advise is, I help manage obviously the marketing team, and so we, have to deal with the Facebook and Instagrams and everything of the world. You can turn on two-factor authentication for pretty much every social media site as well. So if you're a business, make sure you have it on because we've talked a little bit about Facebook there earlier. They are a nightmare to deal with. If you have any problems with your account, you won't be able to talk to anyone. It's ridiculous. So, making sure you've got security on those and your logins, you have that managed really, really well. It's important. So don't just think about two-factor authentication with, say, Google or Microsoft. You can use it for all your systems, and whether it's obviously Xero use it, but if you're using a job management system, they can have it and all that sort of stuff pretty much now.
The biggest mountain bike race in the Southern Hemisphere, which is one of the biggest, I should say, biggest one-day race, Walker 100 up in Rotorua. Someone managed to get into their Facebook account and delete it.
Whoa, that would have had a lot of followers.
Couldn't get it back. So they just had to start again.
And if you think about that sort of business, like, they'll obviously have email lists and that kind of stuff, but that's a huge communication tool for what they're about, sharing content about updates.
2 months out from the race, they literally, within a week, realised that actually they're better off just starting again.
Start from scratch.
But that would be primarily one of their main sources of communication into the race, was with updates and things that, you know what I mean? And bang.
Yeah. And you think about it, like my favourite example of Roller's Bakery, my local bakery, which is fantastic down the road. Instagram is a really big communication tool. They put their specials every morning. They tell what their special donuts are. They have amazing donuts, by the way. But, so it is the way of you communicating. So you not having that tool available for potential months end, massive disrupt to sales, how you do things, what your customers are experiencing. So, a lot of data is about the financial loss, but I think it would be impossible to quantify. But the amount of disruption any of these sort of situations happen for your business, for you personally, your staff, your customer, lost productivity, communication, it would be a lot. So anyway, yeah. The one thing I use this, and there's other sites out there, but Callum, you talked about the use of strong passwords, and people go, well, how the heck do I remember my strong passwords? Password managers are pretty good. I use 1Password. I know LastPass is a really good one, but that's a really good way of them auto-generating really strong passwords, lots of unique code identifiers, random numbers, and then remembering it in a really safe way, which you can have stupid amount of security around that it logs you out every 10 seconds kind of thing. So password manager is also a really good way. Also, there are business accounts for password management. So if you have your staff with different passwords for, I don't know, whatever site, you can, again, like Dave said for his example, you can lock them out the minute that they've gone so they can't access systems. So there's lots of good ways of, I guess, helping strengthen passwords, manage it more effectively so you're secure, I guess. Any final thoughts there, Callum, on passwords before we go on to kind of the next couple of kind of key points?
No, not really. It's probably covered it.
Yeah, one of the big number one from New Zealand is actually keeping software updated. Why is that so important, Callum?
I guess it reflects what I said before. Is hackers are always one step in front. So any time software comes out, there's always a vulnerability in it. When Windows is constantly or continually putting out updates, and that's just because someone's found a backdoor into it or a hack into it, and so they just have to put out an update to stop that vulnerability. So we'll never always be able to stop them, but the updates are the things that say, hey, these are the most common hacks at the moment that we're aware of. So here's an update that's going to stop that.
So I guess if you're sitting there and you're like, oh, I'm updated my computer about a year, that's not a good thing, shall we say? Auto updates and that's
probably
not. No.
Yeah. No.
Which is why I'm guessing we get forced updates. Randomly, your computer's like, see ya.
Because I guess there'll be different levels of security there. Ones that, okay, when you update it, when you can, it's okay. But there'll be some that they probably Microsoft discover and you go, whoa, this is a big one. We'll
this has to happen now.
This has to happen now.
Yeah, exactly
you also get that with Apple and stuff, don't you? I think one I'll touch upon this links to, it's not necessarily to cybersecurity, but how you collect data and secure data of your customers is now, it's become a big thing in privacy. There was a big legislation change, I think it was last year, and there was all those ads around about people taking registrations at the local football and where you use that information. And I think as a business, you have a huge responsibility to your customers about how you store and record your information. As you sort of said there, Dave, a lot of the cloud applications, whether it's CRMs, customer relationship management tools, or specific tools you use, job management tools, whatever, which might have customer information, has really good security in it, inbuilt. But I remember when I think I was getting my COVID, and you'd sit there, and we all had to sit there for 15 minutes after you get the old needle in the arm. And you'd sit there and they'd go up to the counter, and then someone would go, can you just confirm your name and date of birth? And so in front of 20 people, everyone's going, Stuart Wilkinson, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't know if that's the best way of managing this completely, because they've just told me some quite key information. But it's
like
quite
we're about
nonchalant.
to get off topic.
I know, we're getting off topic though.
Did they check that against your ID, or were you even?
I can't remember, Dave. But I guess there is a lot of common procedures which, is it the most riskiest thing in the world? Probably not. But like you said, Dave, about the Facebook example, a lot of your security questions, a lot of the information about you is really pertinent to get into systems. And I guess links to your own personal credit cards and banking, all that sort of stuff. So how you as a business owner store your information, like paper's not good, first of all, don't leave pieces of paper around. It's really important to make sure you're securing your customers' information, especially if you're holding credit cards on file, all that sort of stuff, making sure you use really good systems around that through your bank or whatever. But yeah, just a little rant there, because I hear people just talking openly, especially in places like doctor surgery, they're so nonchalant around it. And I'm like...
It's like the same one though, isn't it? Like say like with the bank cards, everyone signs the back of it, a credit card or whatever. But then you can actually go in and set something up on a hire purchase to say a credit card, and then sign all the documents with the signature you've just learnt off the back.
Mm-hmm.
So technically you probably shouldn't actually sign the back of your credit card. You should carry your driver's license with your signature on it. So that you can verify it that way.
I think that goes against a lot of bank security profiles. Let's not advise that.
I'm not saying advise it, but it's an interesting setup, isn't it? It's like
but
it's a bit counterintuitive. You're banking on the fact that you actually managed to keep hold of your card.
And I think the one area that has got pretty good, I think, is the banks are pretty proactive in this. I saw actually there was a new feature from ANZ that got launched yesterday. I don't think it's been probably for business for a while, but where you can save your credit card for a subscription of something. Let's say, I don't know, whatever it is, Netflix. And so you can go into ANZ now and see all the areas where you regular purchase, where they will have your details saved. So you've got an overview of all the ongoing spend. So I think the banks are pretty good at trying to give you visibility. But again, if you've got business credit cards, all that kind of stuff, there is exposure there in a different way. It's not necessarily cyber, but just security in general and your financials, I guess, coming back to us as being accountants, it's really important. And I guess make sure you've got good processes on that sort of stuff is vitally important, and good policies, which links into probably HR and stuff. So we're going off topic massively there. Last part, all this information, I'll put lots of links below, I don't want to get too technical here, but I guess overall, Callum, most of our clients will have offices or workshops or manufacturing sites, and they've got a Wi-Fi network that they've set up for their staff, for them. And on that network, they'll have all their work computers, but people will give it so they can use their personal mobile. But the network is probably the number one issue and risk around that, depending on it. And I guess a lot of people will go, cool, I've signed up with Vodafone and that's sweet as, and they'll sort it out. So how do people make sure that their network themselves, because I guess if someone gets into the network, that's the link to all computers and all things. How do people make sure their network is secure, and what are, top 3 tips around the network within their office or cafe or whatever, especially if you have public Wi-Fi and that kind of stuff? That's a bit of a risk.
Yeah, no, so I guess my biggest bit of advice for just IT security in general is every business should probably have an IT expert, be that someone in-house or someone that you're consulting to, or someone who consults to you, and everyone should at least get in touch with them and say, hey, what are the actions that I can take place? What vulnerabilities do you see, and what can we actually do better? That's probably the first thing that I'd suggest anyone does. And my handy tips, I'm not even going to pretend to know everything about everything, but there's a couple of things. Is a business probably should have a guest Wi-Fi as well.
Yes.
So, we've got one here, and the guest Wi-Fi is just the generalized password that we give out to everyone. So a couple of reasons for that is one, it separates our work data that's traveling through it from any guest data, but also it means we don't have to give our guests our password to our Wi-Fi, which then may be actually linked to other things as well. So just having a generic password that you can give the guests that swaps out is helpful. We're looking at firewalls, and again,
what's a firewall, Callum?
Yeah, and again, I was about to say I won't even understand what a firewall is, or even pretend to know what a firewall is. Much like everyone's computers, where we've got Windows firewall on Windows-based computers, it's our firewall sit essentially as a boundary between the outside world, internet, and then it just basically sits at the top of our office, I would say, and any data that comes in or out of our office or in and out of our internet connection before it hits the computers goes through this firewall, and it knows of most of the vulnerabilities that can happen and the hacks that can happen, and that just says, actually, no, this data packet's not going to go through me, and it will then send an alert to our IT providers saying, hey, something's happening here, and we can limit, I guess, what activity happens through our sites through those firewalls as well. But
so I guess that goes back, Callum, a little bit to Dave's point originally about making sure you've got control over the logins and stuff of it's the kind of that other part is you make sure you've got control of the network of what's coming in before you even get to the device in some ways.
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot easier if you can stop massive vulnerabilities before they even hit individual users' computers. Then it makes things a lot easier. If you've got a nice secure network running inside, because don't forget, we're 100% cloud-based.
Yeah.
Obviously. However, a lot of places aren't 100%. So they'll be storing data locally on their individual computers, and they may have a server box sitting in an office, and everyone in the office is all linking into those computers. It might only be one, or it might only be two. In a controlled environment that's disassociated or disconnected from the internet, those computers are going to be quite secure, and they're just going to communicate with each other all day. As soon as you add the internet in there, another source can actually come in and touch it, which is why a firewall sitting on the top is essentially going to say, hey, we're only going to allow in what we want to let in, and the rest of everything in the office is secure.
Yeah. And I guess if in a business where, as you said, come that link to that guest password, but make sure you secure, you have divides between what might be guests, and if you're cafes and that sort of stuff, you might have that one side of the coin there versus what is business critical stuff, because a lot of, you think about it, point of sale and all that sort of stuff is linked off your Wi-Fi nowadays. So business critical information and applications, that keeping them separate is probably pretty good advice there. So I think that probably brings it to a nice summary. I guess I'll come to Dave first, and Callum, any final, like, from your words of wisdom here, Dave, as a ex-business owner, final tips for people around cyber to maybe think about from your experience?
I think you got to speak to the right people, haven't you? And I'd say the only thing that we haven't spoken about, which, you know, isn't silly, is just restricting things. Like if you've got staff with like company credit cards and things like that, keep them on a limit that is applicable to what they should be spending, you know? So like if you've got, you know, your classic kind of person who helps you out with just the general kind of cleaning supplies and coffees and milks and stuff like that, she doesn't need a 10 grand limit. She probably needs $500 a month. Or, you know, it's just actually take, and, you know, you have to phone up a bank to get them to reduce a limit, but you can normally apply for a limit upgrade online. But actually take the time to do that. So, you know, make those things actually a priority rather than kicking the can down the road, because it will one day end up biting you.
I agree with that.
I think it's talk to the experts, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I think linked to, I'll just piggyback off that, Dave, as well, in some ways of right limits or right access. It's the same with systems. Like, not everyone needs to be an admin. Make sure the right people are administrators, and you can, especially like social media, you can have people that can set up posts and that sort of stuff, and you approve it as a business owner before it gets posted, things like that. So again, just making sure that, you know, someone that's running the social media might not need to see or have access to the billing information. You might want to keep that as your business owner. So do explore this thing, because the one thing social media is, because they want to be completely hands off, to be honest, they do give good back structure to set that up. Like we have Kev, who's our finance manager, has access to all the billing stuff in Facebook, but Kev doesn't need to be the production house. So, you know, you make sure the right people have got access. Callum, final points.
Final points, like we discussed a lot of, I guess, doom and gloom and things that could happen, but you know, the way to we have to think of how do we mitigate our risks. And I guess the thing is, as you both pointed out, talking to your IT experts, even if you're not doing that, is education within your organization, within your staff, making them, you know, aware of what a phishing email looks like, and letting them know that, you know, me as the director, I'm not going to email you and say, hey, please transfer $10,000 into this creditor's bank account. That's not the process, and this is the process we follow, and understand what passwords are, or security. You know, like I used to see around RightWay, and I still see in some clients' offices, is you walk in and the Wi-Fi password's sitting on your whiteboard. Probably not a good idea. And then there's a little PIN number on a sticky note on someone's desk somewhere. You know, it's stuff like that. It's really important. There are some helpful tools out there with the phishing email. We ran one through RightWay maybe about 6 or 9 months ago. We had our IT provider just send out some fake phishing emails that they tracked to see A, the hit rate, and B, who was actually, you know, going to click on one. Fortunately, we only had one person click on one, and then we did some education, and fortunately the second time they put it through, another couple of months later, just a random one from another phishing email, we came through, and, you know, we didn't have any hits because we had a lot of education around it. So education is really important, and it will just mitigate a lot of people's risks.
And I think I remember when we did that, Callum, that one of the things that Rico, who does our IT management, talked about is that hackers are also smart enough to know who's important in organizations to target. So if you are the business owner, you are more likely to get targeted than Joe Blogs, because they know you've got the keys to the safe. So as business owners, you're probably the biggest threat with that sort of stuff, with our emails, because information is now readily available, and they'll get hold of your email and start to pepper you with it. So awesome. Okay, as I said throughout the podcast, we'll link all the sort of documents and sort of help guides that is on at Cert New Zealand. So there's some pretty good stuff there just to get you started. And there's a lot of what we've referenced. As always, make sure you like and subscribe wherever you listen to the podcast. Always helpful. And make sure you check out all of RightWay social media channels. Again, linked below for any other updates that we have. So take care, and thanks, Dave. Thanks, Callum.
Thanks, team.
Thanks, team.